There we go. Here we go.
There we go.
There we
Perfect.
go. All right. Well, let's jump into it. Jen's like, oh, we're gonna play the song all the way out.
Nope, I caught a little off guard. Give me a second to turn.
DJ
DJ Mixer
DJ
is
J Rich in the house.
70 years old when it comes to technology, so
Oh,
here we go.
still light years ahead of me, friend.
All right, there we go.
Well, we're excited to be back for our second session. We had a wonderful time with all of our great friends in the region a couple of weeks ago, talking about listening differently. And so, when we think about the building blocks, this is just the next building blocks session that we kind of do in this one. I'm going to say very upfront, this is my disclaimer, my trigger warning, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to talk a lot and then we're going to get real interactive. So there's points for good note taking, and I'm going to try and move us through quickly so that we have lots of time to be able to get really interactive, because we're going to be doing some mapping. We're going to be doing some, a little bit of role playing, all of that good stuff. So, but there's some level setting content I want to move us through. Sound good? Everybody signed up for the right thing? Okay, here we go. Let's go. Next slide. So here's kind of what our time looks like today. And so one of the exciting topics that we're talking about is empowering the parts of our systems change. And that really means that we're talking about identifying those smart and often small interventions that move an entire system, right? And that's called leverage points, right? And once you know where they are, what to look for, your work is going to become so much clearer, and your strategies are going to be, I would say, much more hopeful. So we'll spend the bulk of our time talking about that today. But we always like to start off with a good check-in question. And so I know many of you all, of us are coming out of Thanksgiving. Maybe you were in the kitchen. I avoided the kitchen like the plague. But if you were anywhere near it and you know what boiling plots, look like, we're going to start off with a little cooking metaphor. Here's our check-in question. What's something that's heating up in your work right now? It's heating up. It's heating up. That if you left it alone, right? If you don't do anything to it, it's going to boil over, right? We all know what that feeling looks like, right? Where you lost the plot on the work, and then suddenly something that was on simmer is now spilled all over your cooktop. So I'd love for us to take a couple of seconds to just kind of share out in your thinking, what's something um, that feels like it's heating up right now, and it could boil over. Feel free you can come off mute. I'd love you to come off mute. We're small and mighty to start with, so this is a safe space. Looking at you, Nick. Talking to you, Janet. Yeah. Come on, the whole squad in the lower conference room. What's heating up right now?
Well, I'll start then. So right now, the big thing on my plate is we've been strategizing around our calendar for 26 and what the trainings will look like. And there was a great, robust conversation. And if I was just to like walk away till the new year, that would not, in my mind, the boiling over would be, it would just, everything would go cold. Like there would be no action for January, February, which would be very difficult in March when we report out to our bigger the grant reports we have to do that help fund some of this work. And so that's something that I'm really focused on getting with the team, things solidified.
I hear that.
Mhm.
Don't leave it to set over the holiday. Yep. What else?
I think one thing that probably is prior to Thanksgiving, and ironically on what's heating up, we had a code blue, which I'm not sure if you're all familiar. Code blue is the shelter in place. So if the weather goes below a certain degree, the city and the county provide shelter for the unhoused individuals. And the great state of Pennsylvania and the Commonwealth, there's a lot of moving partners in that to come together to agree on to like have mutual understandings with. So we brought everybody together, had a convening, had discussions, level set, and did develop some partnerships to move forward with that. So I feel if we did not keep that going when the fire started for that,
Yeah.
it would have boiled over to kind of scrambling. Even though we kind of scrambled anyway, because I think we should have been planning 6 months ago, but that's besides the point. We at least got it there. But I feel like it would have stayed scrambling if, we just kind of was like, oh, let's just stay warm ourselves.
Yeah. Yep. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really, really good one. Yeah. Anybody else?
One of the things that, just to finish the lower squad here, or squad. I think one of the things is kind of related to what Amy was talking about a little bit. I was thinking of, we're doing a lot of sort of mapping out strategic planning of, like, for example, for women in philanthropy, like what we're doing and so forth. But if we just have it on a lovely
Meeting is
spreadsheet,
being
but
recorded.
not actually, moving forward with that. So that's also like a sense of urgency and as well as, and then because we want to.
Uh-oh, I think we've got an echo, Janet. Yeah.
Yeah, she's on here twice.
Sorry, trying to exit.
It's okay.
No problem.
That's all right. There we go. Thank you. Nick, you want to hop in here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in fundraising for my agency, and
Sure.
something that might seem small but is also so big is acknowledging donors. And we just merged, so we've had a bit of a backlog of acknowledgments and gifts that have come through, and so if we just left it where it is right now, come a few months down the line, we would have it'd be doubled, especially since we just got our quarterly appeal out. It would be, we would be working on it for like days on end. So that's one thing we're working on right now, getting our acknowledgments out and doing it in a timely manner so that we don't have that backlog down the line.
Right. That's right. And a lot of times, so much of what feels like could potentially be boiling over, it is about the timing, right? It's about making sure that we're thinking about things in advance of that, right? And keeping our finger on the pulse. And I think the nail, I'm trying to remember which from the lower conference room squad, I don't know if it was Amy maybe, who used the like magic word, urgency, right? When you ask a question like this, and in our session last time, and Nick and Janet, I don't think I met you last time, so I'll encourage you both to watch the recording and get in the worksheets from that if you haven't already. That's one of the cues that we listen for, right? Is urgency. This is a great question to ask people to be able to unearth, right, the urgency as a powerful indicator that there is a leverage point in sight, right? The leverage point, there is an opportunity, there is a place for us to do some good opportunistic work at hand. So keep that in mind. We use check-in questions as a good way to be able to, like, you can use these too. Hello,
Samara, what's your answer? You got to answer too.
Oh, I do. I do need to answer. What's boiling over? Well, I will answer from my work, not from the case made, but particularly I work a lot of my board service. As folks know, I'm an old school educator. I'm just a kindergarten teacher turned good or bad. I don't know how to describe that today, but I serve on the board of a school here, an all girls school here, and we start talking about the next school year now, right? And we start talking about outcomes, and if we left that, if we just said, well, we're super concerned about some of our math and science scores, it feels like something we could probably not pay attention to. That's from a year ago. The kids will show up different if we don't think about the interventions right now. If we don't think about what we can do during the summer to support kiddos, it's going to boil over, and the results, of course, will be harmful to our students. So I have a whole day retreat this weekend just digging into that stuff, and it's December, right? And we know that kind of forward thinking is essential. Jen, what about you? I'm sorry. I did leave us out, didn't I?
Yeah, and we
few
also had,
others- we
yeah,
also
we
had
got
a few others join us. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I can't, that's my screen is not big enough. That's why. I'm like, why can't I see everybody? Oh, there
yeah,
is everybody.
yeah. Janet, you got yourself figured out, so you want to jump in? Can we hear you,
Uh,
hopefully? Oh,
There we go.
can you hear
it,
me?
yep,
Yes.
you're all good.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm having technical difficulties here and my brain's a little scrambled. So, something that's boiling over in my business is I'm the executive director of a small arts alliance, and we need to identify in the next 2 months some key people to assist our main gallery curator because she's completely overwhelmed. And that's a challenge I'm dealing with. I don't know if it pertains to the training we're working on here. I'm a newbie, so forgive me if I'm off track.
Okay,
I'll talk to you later. All right, love you. Bye. Okay, I love you too. Bye.
Hi, Eileen. We love you too. Eileen, is there something boiling up for you? Eileen's like, oh, no, no, no. Now I'm on mute.
Oh,
Oh, uh-oh.
well, I'll go really quick as everybody else is jumping in. And in my community, I just went to an event the other day where our economic development folks gave a presentation that said that we need 70,000 units of housing to keep up with the number of employers that are looking to move into our community. And if we can't get a handle on how to create that housing in our community, we're going to lose the opportunity to that new industry and business into our community. So that's one of the things that I know is really present in the minds of lots of elected officials and others in our community is how on earth are we going to get that workforce housing in to make sure that we can capture some of that growth.
Just 70,000, huh?
No sweat.
No sweat. No sweat. No sweat. Well, I'll as folks are coming, I'll give folks, a minute. But as I said, we asked that question because urgency is a great indicator, right, of where leverage points is, and it is a critical component, as I mentioned, to the listening that we do. And so we'll build on from the last session about why the listening is important. Okay. So let's get going because as I mentioned up top, I'm gonna chat, but I want us to get to the interactive part. I don't want y'all to glaze over on me too quickly. So just a little bit about us. We're the Case Made. I'm Samara Herrera. My delightful colleague Jen Rich is hailing from the Chicago area. I'm in the Kansas City, Missouri area, and we work all across the country with the courageous leaders and good troublemakers just like you today. And so for those of you all who may have joined us in way back when in September for the NAPA conference, right? Dr. T reminded us, Dr. T and Harriet Tubman, I suppose, reminded us that, in this moment, we can't go backward, right? And we can't stay here. And so we must move forward. But doing so means that we have to reimagine how justice wins. And so what we know in the way that we're reimagining how justice wins today is the recognition that many of the problems that we're facing, many of the challenges you named in your work, many of the issues that show up in our communities, they're symptoms of deeper systems issues, right? But the reality, y'all, and this is a safe space. So there are going to be moments where I raise my hand and be like, "Oh, I'm talking to me," so you don't have to feel like I'm talking just to you. If you're anything like me, sometimes we spend so much of our time fighting fires, right? Applying band-aids or putting in quick fixes that solve for a symptom, but not the underlying problem. And so systems thinking helps us step back and look at why the same challenges continue to show up. Why do they keep reappearing? And so today we have to understand why the system works the way it does so that we can intervene find those leverage points, and be more strategic and powerful with our intervention. So our time today is going to help us shift from firefighting to fireproofing. I like that. It's going to help us move from fixing individuals to transforming systems. One of the ways that we'll be able to do that, you'll be able to talk about, is how we define systems change in some clear language. We'll do some practice around root cause, use some tools to help us map the systems that you're working in. We're going to distinguish between shallow and deep leverage points so that you can begin to identify a leverage point and build a plan to intervene in your first case. So those are our goals today. That's what we're doing. Where's a little bit of theory, but it's just not learning theory, right? This is a practice-based, right, set of skills that builds your capacity for impact. And this is about making learning actionable. And the real deal is you're exactly where you're supposed to be today. There is not a better moment, no matter how much is boiling over on the stove of your life, for you to be listening and learning and building this capacity right now, because you're the leaders that are needed. Okay? Sound good? All right. The rainbow slide. I have a feeling that like one day, after all the work that we do with our friends at the Scranton Area Foundation, Amy is going to have nightmares about the rainbow slide, because this is our grounding slide in strategic case making, right? This is, you can find it in your book on page 68. If you guys have got the case made book, if not, see Amy. But also it's where we reset for everything. And it is the foundation for your understanding around strategic case making. Okay. So here's our rainbow slide, right? This is our grounding image, and it's as Jen likes to call it, a mixed metaphor like no other. We love a metaphor over here. So let's consider ourselves. We're just those 2 feet at the starting path. That rainbow path is where we'd like to be able to go, right? It's our path toward justice. And so when we approach someone and we're asking them to join us on this path on the right, what we're really asking them to do is to make a choice, right? The choice on the right toward the rainbow is to start walking with us toward a path to the better future, right? But the choice on the left is inaction, or worse, and what we often feel in the headwinds are opposition. And what we know, and what probably drives you crazy is what drives me crazy, is that people continue to choose the path on the left. Why? Right? Why do they do that? What's on the right? You're working on all of these good things, right? I should have, Janet, in your honor, I'll add arts to this list as well for next time, right? Is for sure, these are the good things we want people to join us on, right? These are the good things that move us toward justice. But they choose the path on the left, which I call the path to Mordor, right? The dark and stormy path. Why do they do that? So much of that, and a lot of this, the social science that's rooted in strategic case making, is this is the way our brains work, right? Because change is scary, right? And we don't like to be scared. It seems impossible, right? And we can't even compute how or remember how change actually happens. It feels like sacrifice, right? And folks don't want to lose what they have. In addition to all of these things, right? The isms, right? Folks are exhausted and tired, right? There's a lot of old mental models to overcome, right? A lot of like trying to understand solutions and systems, us versus them, like all of these things. And we're asking folks to join us, right? We're asking folks to be able to rewire their brains after millions of years of evolution that keeps us locked on the left, and hundreds of years of culture to join us on the right. And so what we've got are our potential champions on this bridge, right? This bridge of understanding that we want to move across. That break in the bridge, that gap that you see there, right? This is exactly where strategic case making, right? And the set of skills and principles shore up this bridge. It's what helps us move folks across the path to join us on the path on the right to the rainbow, right? So when we talk through a lot of the skills today, this is about shoring up the gap that allows us to help them overcome that, right? Because what it does is it gets people in their heart space, it gets them thinking about our why in an affirmative way. It helps us share our stake, right? It's about how we act in alignment with each other. Sound good? Sound like the thing you're working on every day. I'm like Nick's in fundraising and development. Nick, so much of that donor stuff, right? It's helping them get across that bridge. Well, this is the way in which we do that as strategic case making. But strategic case making is built up with a lot of building blocks. So we moved immediately out of the Thanksgiving holiday in my house, and my husband went full tilt into Christmas and immediately dragged me to the Lego store. He's a big Lego head and was like, "Hey, girl, look at this $500 Lego set." I was like, "Absolutely not." But this is in honor of a little bit of the Lego story. So the image on the left is a Lego bridge in Germany. And again, we love a metaphor. I'm going to run a metaphor. So I was like, a bridge. Oh my gosh, a bridge with Legos. You all must see this image, right?
Yes.
As you right, as you can see, there are these oversized Legos, or as my husband said, they're bricks, honey. They're not Legos, they're bricks. These oversized bricks are connected together, right, to make a pathway for folks to cross. So I want us to think about the parts that make up our case, right? Our very first win as component bricks that when linked together, they become the bridge that ushers people across to the other side, right? And they become our champions on that pathway we talked about. And so this is where all of those things connect. Last time we were together, we talked about listening, and we talked about listening for will building cues that help us identify what our champions care enough to fight for right now. That's that urgency, right? That's why we're listening for what they care enough about to fight for right now. Or as Nick, as you mentioned, what they care enough to give resources, right, toward right now. That's a huge building block. The the three things that we're kind of going to dig into today to kind of get to that case making, my first strategic case, is systems thinking helps us to see a landscape and identify cracks that are in need of repair, right? Our leverage points show us exactly where to intervene. And the influence, right, helps us secure support and buy-in and to also navigate those complex relationships. So by the end of this, right, we're not going to solve. I'm going to just tell you, I am not going to solve. I want to be clear because I don't want y'all to walk away and be like, Samara told us we was going to solve my whole work problem down. I want y'all lying and told folks I did it. I'm not doing it. We are going to talk through this model so that you can begin to do that, so that you can fill in these questions for yourselves on the first case. Let me be very clear. Getting to that rainbow path is a pathway of many, 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 many cases. So we're going to teach you the skill, right, that allows for you to reapply this to every case moving forward. Does that make sense? That is how you win on your pathway to justice. You're just going to be putting these bricks together every single time. But today we're going to walk through samples that allow you to get some practice in using that so that you can walk out and start doing it yourself. But this is a key slide right here. This is the graphic organizer. This is the worksheet that you want to be able to fill out every single time. Sound good? Okay, let's get into it. So to back up just a heartbeat, last time we talked about listening. These are all the cues that we talked through last time, right? All of the different ground ourselves. We talked about listening different, not just for facts, but for will building. But particularly today, we're going to use urgency, right? And urgency is generally the first signal that our system is out of alignment, right? When you start to hear people say, right? I don't know, I said this 12 times a week at this point. This can't keep happening. Or, my gosh, we've reached a breaking point. Or, oh, something has got to give. Ding, 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 ding. If you're hearing that across the table in the coffee shop, right, and all these checkout line, they're pointing us toward places in a system that is under strain. And strain reveals leverage. So as we talked about last time, we're dispassionate ethnographers, right? We're listening in the flow. We're ear hustling, as my daughter calls it, like, oh, ear hustling. I have a teenager, so, you know, ear hustling, right? What we're going to talk about today is how you follow that signal into a deeper systems analysis, right? So really quickly, I would just love if you want to come off chat, you can drop in the chat. What do you hear that feels urgent in your communities right now? It feels urgent, right? You can share, come off mute, that this isn't what your work tells you is urgent, but it's what your neighbors, your friends, your family, and folks in places where you're relaxing and hanging out every day at the pickleball court. I don't know, pickleball is huge here. Like, I don't know if it's big there. People love their pickleball. But pickleball, I don't play pickleball, y'all, because I'm afraid I'm gonna break something. But I love to hang out and listen at the pickleball court because the urgency flows. Where do you hear it? What feels urgent in your community? Feel free. I'll take a couple of them so we can keep rolling. What feels urgent? Jenna, did I see you come off mute?
I will lift up what Jen had said, like your community, her community of housing. You know, I don't know if we've quantified, maybe, but I just don't know, quantified the housing needs within our like city or county. But you know, the cost of living paired with the opportunities there, right? So there might be available units, but are they dignified to live in? You know, like that's one thing we heard is there could be enough units, but are they like, would you want your mother living in that unit? You know, so that is one thing I think we hear here often. So I think housing universal is something of urgency, and just the matter of urgency, I think might be a little different in each area. That's probably just the only difference for that.
Yeah. What else? What are you hearing?
Gosh, I'm hearing a lot, Sarah, so I can keep going on it.
It is a strength that you bring to the table, Vivian, for sure.
You know, I think food insecurity is a huge one, you know. Just, I mean, not even just hearing, but like watching and reading the local news, seeing just, you know, whether or not social media, but everybody, you know, there's a common, they might have different opinions, but everybody is worried about, you know.
Affordable childcare and also keeping having good wages for the childcare providers as well, and childcare retention and number of seats available and
huge.
And also the cost of living, like the affordable wage is a huge one here. We actually have the University of Scranton does a study every other year looking at that. You know, of what it actually costs a family of 2, of 3, of 4 to live a comfortable, like not even a comfortable, basic need life. You know, and we are on the lower end, I think, of wages still here. I think that is something that's urgent and has been pressing for some time.
Absolutely. I'm actually I'm dropping in the chat. Just that affordable health insurance. Ooh.
Yes.
Rising costs of goods. I dropped the link to an article, Jen and I, whenever we're in partnership with a community, we get all like nerdy about what's going on there. And just yesterday or the day before yesterday, maybe the Brookings Institute released an article in which the Scranton area is named, right, as one of the top places where the subsection of the middle class, right, is still struggling with affordability, right, being able to meet their everyday needs. So you've got people who are working, gainfully employed. They've got, the jobs that our education system is prepared for them to get, and they are still struggling to feel like they're a huge, subsection of your neighbors feel that way, right? And here's the funny part. It's worse in other countries. If you take a look at it, it's an interactive map that allows for you to zone into other places, is worse off, right? And so when we talk about the universal urgency, that's one that comes out really, really loudly. So we found that, and I was like, whoa! Jen found it, and I was like, wow, I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
You know.
So
And I will say healthcare, that's huge, especially with the current state of our hospital system here, along with the need in rural communities to begin with. So, you know, paired together, it's just beyond urgency. And it's probably the top one, you know, I think because we've been living in it, at least trying to facilitate it, it slipped my mind maybe for 5 seconds, but you know, it's definitely probably even above or to close of housing.
yeah, I would agree. So what I'd love for you to do is, in that, if you remember that slide, urgency, I want you to write down those things that we just named, or what, you know, jot it down, right? Jot that down. Jot that down. Okay? Because that's the cue that you're looking for, right? Ding, 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 ding. It's top of mind. People are talking about it. We're, you know, at Thanksgiving, talking about, you know, how expensive toothpaste is, you know, all of those good things, right? Okay. So next we'll move into systems. But before we talk about systems, I got to do a little systems change 101, right? And I want to make sure we got a good definition. So oftentimes when I say systems change, right? Everybody's face, y'all have all seen this meme, right? She's like, oh, I love the commercial. There's a progressive commercial, and Flo and the team are trying to explain to this little boy about the economy, and they're like, what even is the economy? The economy, it cracks me up every single time. But we're the same way about systems change. We tell people I'm in systems change work, right? And then people are like, well, what does that mean? And then, you know, our face kind of looks like this. I also love this meme because I feel like Jen looks like this, and I feel like it needs to be a Halloween costume for her. And I don't know how she's going to make that happen for me, but she's going to figure it out. But I want to give us a simple definition that you can walk out of here and use and explain every day. Systems change is shifting the conditions that hold a problem in place. And I love this definition because it's super simple and it's accurate, right? System change isn't about just the actions, the moving fast and going nowhere. It is also about shifting the deeper conditions that keep inequity in place, right? And if we use that definition, most folks want to find themselves in and around systems change work, right? So I want you to hold that, right? When we are there are broken places and conditions that hold issues of iniquity, of challenge for even small subsets of our neighbors, right? Our work is shifting those conditions, right? Not just fixing all the problems, but shifting the conditions of that. Okay? Sound good? So nobody walk out in the world with the confused lady face on with the murder map where you're like, and then we've got to map this, right? Here's what that means. So when we start to define, right, remember that building block about systems, we have got to get root to the conditions of the system, right? So let's talk about what that looks like. Next slide, Jen. This is from, and I want to be clear, we believe in using assets. If you've never seen this before, take it down. It doesn't belong to the case made. This is from the organization FSG. It's called their Water of Systems Change framework. Hopefully you've seen it. If you haven't, baby, welcome. This is my fave. It was introduced in 2018, and I think it's one of the best visual introductions of systems thinking and understanding of what it looks like to shift conditions of systems change. Okay. So let's talk about those conditions, right? Across this top, right? These structural change conditions, they're explicit, right? They're the top of the iceberg, right? That's what we see all the time. There are those policies, those laws and regulations, right, that we see and shape systems. those practices. And those are the actions and behaviors of organizations and individuals. Your practices, your programs, right, like processes, all of those things sit as structural systems, right? Resource flows, right? How the movement of money happens, funding and other resources. Nick, baby, you in systems change, all about that resource flow, my friend. Right? How do we shift resources toward need, right? In special areas. That is deep systems change work, and it is a one condition of systems change. Then you go to the next level, the secondary level, which is relational, right? Which is a little less explicit, or it's a little harder to see. It's a little bit more nebulous, right? And that really is about those relationships, right? The interactions between different actors when you hold a convening. So, Amy, that beautiful NAPA Learning Conference, right, is all about relationship and connections, and what those conversations that happen in the bathroom, those are the kinds of interventions that happen in systems changes when we do deep relational and connectedness work. Power dynamics, right? Who's in charge? Elections, right? The relationships of power and influence between stakeholders, right? You all know, if you ever work, the change in a CEO, right, often comes with a whole new systems change paradigm, right? Who is elected in this country is a whole power dynamic systems change condition. And finally, right, mental models are those beliefs and narratives that shape how we see the world. That's the deepest, deepest, deepest. And it's transformative, y'all. That's transformative, right? The deeper the level, the more powerful it is. The deeper the level, actually, of the leverage point, the more powerful it actually is, right? So, for example, if we can change a policy, that's great. You can change a policy and never touch beliefs, right? But if you change beliefs, the policies have to follow. A great example, Jen and I were chuckling about this morning, right? Is the fact that, like, we do lots of executive orders, at the national level or at state levels, even local levels, right? Those can all be undone, right? You ever notice the first day, everything, we're like, yeah, we got an executive order done, and then it's gone because it sits at this top structural, explicit level, and it's easily undone. When you change mental models, a way and framing of thinking about a system, you actually touch all of those things. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. This is the best visual cue. You're going to see this multiple times. It's going to be the basis for how we're going to map for your leverage points. So get comfortable with it. We'll come back to it. Okay. So let's move on. Let's get into our first activity. All right. So you're like, Samara, I want to get deep. I want to go there. I want to find root systems. We're going to practice an activity called, it's my favorite tool, right? Because too often we try and change a policy without addressing relationships, or we try to change relationships without addressing deeper narratives, right? It requires actions across all three, right? Within a particular systems. But we say stuck in our systems change level at the symptom level. The best tool and the fastest way is this activity called the 5 whys. I love this little girl. And if you've ever been around little kids, have little kids, the but why, baby. I saw nightmares about this, trying to, I don't know, just cause. We say just cause. We're not going to do that today. We're going to practice an activity. So we're going to get interactive. So Jen and I are going to model a particular example of the 5 whys, and then we'll do one together. Okay? Sound good? Okay. Yes. All right, Jen. I got a problem. Jen, families are being evicted at high rates, Jen. People are being put out. It's horrible. Help me get deep. Yeah.
That sounds like a really hard problem to solve. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why do you think families are being evicted?
Oh, I just think it's because these rents are going up. They're just going up faster than like people can keep up with the money. Like they're just the rents are it's just going up too fast.
Yeah, I see that all around me. I agree. Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Why do you think the rents are increasing faster than wages?
I mean, because of the housing supply, like there's just not enough housing. It's too low, right? There isn't enough. And so these landlords, they feel like they can raise prices on the rent because there just isn't enough to go around.
Okay, that makes sense. But so I can you help me understand why do you think the housing supply is low?
I mean, Jen, I think it's because the affordable housing development is just, there's not enough money. It's underfunded. It's not, and it's slow. It takes forever. I mean, you just talked about it today, 70,000 units. How long is that going to take? It takes too long.
So why do you think it's underfunded and slow moving?
Oh, well, I think there's a couple of things. I think that like number one, I think people are just opposed to building new units. It's that like NIMBY, like we don't want to, messing around in our backyard. But I also think it's just like the zoning makes it hard. Do you ever try to like get something built somewhere? There's all these extra laws and restrictions and all these kinds of things and hoops you have to jump through in order to get something built. Well, there's
Oh, sorry.
well,
Why do you think there's public opposition and zoning problems right now?
Well, I think it's because we don't like to talk about who deserves what and who deserves to live in certain neighborhoods, right? Like we have an idea of who deserves to get what, and all of these long-standing fears about property values and all of those kinds of things. Yeah.
All right.
There we are. So the conference room's like, oh man, get ready, y'all. But through those 5 whys, what did we unearth? What did you hear? There was some narrative, some deep mental model bias narrative work. And then at that top level, right, some policies around exclusionary zoning practices, right? So if we were going to take this a step further and say, here are the 2 areas we can really do some work in, we could literally find the leverage points around how we shift public narrative about who belongs, and we could reform zoning, right? That's where we could start. It's not to say that we would automatically suddenly get to families being evicted at eviction rates, but it is a place for us to start making our case. That sound right? Any questions about what we just went through? Because I want us to practice really quickly one of our own. Sound good? Any questions?
No.
Why? Notice we kept getting deeper. She wouldn't let me leave it alone because what happens, right? When people get frustrated and we're like, it's because of the dumb politicians. And they're like, okay, that's enough. No. Our job is to be the toddler, is to be the sweet girl on the left. But why? But why? And sometimes we're doing it with other people, but a lot of times we're doing it with ourselves. Okay. We're asking ourselves that. So,
Oops, sorry.
Yeah. So here we go. Let's do an example. You guys ready? I'm going to give you the problem. Here's the problem. And you all are going to ask me, we're going to come up with the why questions. Okay.
Okay.
Here's the problem, y'all. You can ask it in the chat as well but come off mute too. Students are performing below grade level in reading. Babies can't read. They're reading below grade level. What's our first why?
Why do you think they're reading below level?
Why are they reading below grade level? I think it's probably because they're not receiving good literacy support. Like I think, they just need some like real like structured time to build their like phonics instruction and their literacy instruction.
Why do you think that their literacy structure is not?
Ooh, yeah, why aren't they receiving that reading support was put in the chat.
Yeah, why aren't they receiving that support? Well, it's because class sizes are too big, right? And it's too much for one teacher. You got 30 kids in a class. you know, and it's one teacher and it's just too large for folks to be able to spend that time. Oh, there we go, Nick.
good
Why
job.
class sizes? Good job, Nick. Nick's like, let's get into it. Well, you know, I think it's because the district has all these teacher shortages. It's so hard to get teachers and they're just limited staff capacity. I think it's right. Why? Teacher shortage.
Yep.
There we go. Why is there a teacher shortage? Well, you know, it's because teachers are underpaid, they're overworked, they're leaving the profession, right? We can't hold on to good teachers anymore. Be honest, this is usually where we stop, right? We're like, yep, the teachers leave. But remember, we've got one more why. What's the why?
Why do you think teachers are leaving?
Why are they
teachers
underpaid?
underpaid and overworked?
Good job, Nick.
Yeah.
Good question. Nick, like, I got this. I'm here about this life. Okay. Because the school funding, it's the policies that like prioritize short-term cost savings over sustainable staffing. It's the budget. So tell me then from that where you hear the root. Good job. Where do you hear the root? What's the root you hear in that? What do you think?
But the budget allocation would probably be the root of that, right? Like how the funding is.
Yeah.
Or how the school district funding is decided.
Yep. Yep. That's one. Outdated funding models. I'm going to press you just a little bit harder. Can you find a root that gets around mental models and narrative?
That teachers deserve to be paid more.
Correct. That's a good one. Undervaluing educators. Right?
One thing I hear often is that teachers make good money, which is sometimes, you know, I mean, obviously someone who's been 25 years teaching may be at a good high level, but it's a pretty big assumption that people make. Oh, I know a teacher, they make good money, they make enough, right?
Or they say, well, they only have to work 180 days.
Yes.
For how much they work, they make a decent living. That's the rationale I usually hear, yeah.
So as you think about a leverage point, right, for doing some systems change work, those are the narratives, right, that you have got to shift while also working on, remember at the structural level, the outdated funding models. So those are just a couple of examples. Again, we don't stay stuck. We keep going deeper. 5 whys. 5 whys. And it should always feel like the solution, right, is more complex. Okay, you guys did a great job. Great job. We're going to come back to it. So now let's talk about the leverage point. So now you've gotten to the root. Remember, now we've got the urgency. We've identified the urgency. We've identified the root systems that we're working on, right? That we need to, conditions we need to dig into. Now we've got to figure out leverage points, right? So Donella Meadows, godmother of great systems thinking, taught us a long time ago that, you know, systems don't need giant interventions, right? They need smart ones, right? And so she introduced the idea of a leverage point. For you all physics folks out in the world, you remember this from smart machines, fulcrums, right? All that good stuff. And a leverage point is a place in a system where a small shift produces a big change. Leverage is an idea or a concept that helps you achieve more with less. When you're thinking about a seesaw or a crowbar, right? You want to be able to create small force that can create a significant effect, right? It's a lever. So it allows for a strategist like us to punch above our weight class, right? A little bit of help, that leverage point. But I want us to think about leverage points that are shallow and easy and others that are deep and transformational. All leverage points matter. Okay? They're all good. They're all good. Shallow, deep, baby, do them all. But I want us to be able to differentiate, because oftentimes this is where we get into trouble. We cannot differentiate between the two, right? We can't get into what's easy. And we think we're doing a whole lot with shallow leverage points, and we haven't even gotten to the big one. So shallow leverage points, right, are those like the arrow on the right shows you, that just change rules, they adjust incentives, they shift resource allocation. They are easy. I'm not saying they're easy, like, oh, it's easy to change a policy. I'm not crazy. Anybody who's done some policy work will be like, Samara, are you crazy? That was 3 years. I'm not saying it's easy, right? But the impact is limited because it's easily undone, right? It can be just as easily undone. Deep leverage points change narratives, they shift mindsets, they change what the system values, right? They take longer, but they change everything. So if you want again, all leverage points matter, but if we're aiming for transformation, you've got to aim deeper. And sometimes we start with shallow leverage points so that we can build up our capacity and momentum toward deeper ones, but always moving toward transformation. So when you change how success is measured, right? Hey, like we changed testing, what the testing, we're all, as I mentioned before, all hot and heavy on tests, right? If we change exactly what the test measures for math and science, guess what we've done? We're just changing behavior because we're just shifting how teachers teach, right? And what is required to learn. We haven't changed anything around what is deep around understanding. If we change who is elected, right, or who gets to decide or make decisions, we've shifted power, right? It's important. But in 4 years, 2 years, whatever, guess what happens? That shift changes again. But when you change the narrative about a community right? In particular, we shift what's possible politically, socially, and across all of those different conditions of systems change. So they exist at every level, right? When we map, when we get into the activity, you're going to find multiple leverage points. Your work, right, helps you identify out when we map all of the actors, all of the relationships, the constraints, right? All of the opportunities, possibilities, all of that good stuff. But you've got to be strategic. The part where strategic case making comes in is figuring out which leverage point first. They're all going to be there, but which leverage point you are best positioned to influence first. Okay. So I noticed in the activity of the 5 whys, we identified a bunch of root causes and there were a bunch of leverage points we could pursue. Not all, right? We want to like boil the ocean, chew the elephant all in one fell swoop. That's not what we want to do. We want to identify the very first one that we can get some momentum on, because that's what's going to get your champions excited, right? That's what's going to get, oh, they're cooking it with grease and oil over there. Nick got something going on over there. Let me trot on over. And it just builds the momentum so that we can tackle the deeper stuff. Sound good? Any questions so far before we jump into the bulk of some mapping? Good mapping, anything, because I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Jen's like, oh my God, Samara's coffee, second cup of coffee just kicked in. Any questions? Anything that's like, I don't know, Samara, I disagree. I think you're off, or I've been doing that for years. Any but what abouts that are showing up for you all before we jump into some mapping?
No, I think what I'm hearing is a lot of times we go for the quick win, but then we have to keep going further. And sometimes if we don't find a win that's enough people are behind, there isn't the endurance to keep going for real change. And we, as a convener here, a lot of issues, I think we see it and we get passionate and then it goes away. And this is the exciting work to be able to think about.
Going deeper. Yeah. I say all the time, a lot of times we talk about, you mentioned food insecurity, and folks will spend a lot of time working on, food distribution, food banks, right? Food pantries, resource, right? That's an access resource flow systems change. Good. But we often want to stop there, right? We often are like, well, hey, we fed the people. That's good. But we haven't gotten deep into like, what are the other places where there are leverage for us to continue working? So this is really just about how we continue to build, right? And build. We move some people across the bridge to the food pantry, and we're happy with that. And the reality is, in order to get transformative about food security, we needed more people, and we needed several more cases, several more condition opportunities to be able to do that, right? So let's jump into some mapping. This is, listen, y'all, this interactive. So Jen knows she hates the sound of my voice. So ta-da! Doesn't this look a lot like the FSG model? You can draw this. Let me tell you one thing I want to encourage you to do. The next coalition meeting or whatever you're in, draw this out on a sticky note. You can literally draw the boxes, right? It doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be pretty. It can be for you. Draw it on the whiteboard. Oh, Jen, you're talking, but you're on mute. It was like I could see my sister wife like chatting over here, but like, what'd you
No,
say?
I was talking to my husband was walking by and saying, "Can I come in?" Sorry.
Oh, I
Go
thought
ahead.
you were saying something encouraging to me or to move on. Okay. Sorry. But this is your graphic organizer, right? This is the way in which we are going to move. So again, today we are not going to solve for everything that you all are working on. We're going to practice one so you get the hang of being able to talk through what this looks like. Sound good? Okay.
Yes.
So I'd love to, as I'm thinking about this, I was just thinking, I think because you guys like knocked it out of the park. I wasn't expecting you to knock it out of the park so quickly and so fast. And I was like, oh, we got some brainiacs in the room. Oh. I think what I'd like to be able to do is to use the example, the 5 whys that we gave, right? The root cause, right? We identify, what did we say the root issue was? To use that to be able to map to continue finding some leverage points. So I want you to think about, this is you said you hear it in your everyday, right? Outdated funding models, and teachers don't deserve, what teachers deserve to make already, what feels right for them. So we'll use that as our example for mapping, right? And so remember, we're looking for opportunity. We're looking for where are the leverage points for this root issue, right? And so we've already identified that is something about underinvestment, in funding models and underinvestment, and then the undervaluing of educators. So thinking about that, underinvestment and outdated funding models and undervaluing educators, let's walk through this. Okay? So we'll start at the top. Let's start at the top. Policies.
So I think
Go ahead. Yep.
the formula funding within at least the state of Pennsylvania and how funds are distributed throughout the districts within the Commonwealth. And then the other thing would be the funding of charter and cyber schools.
See where Jen got started. She didn't start in policy, she started in resource flows, how funds are distributed across schools, right? The funding model, the state's funding.
Well, I know that the funding models really go to policies, because that's really like right now in Pennsylvania, a big discussion, because the way the funding formula is inequitable. However,
Yeah.
some local legislators don't want that changed because obviously
They get more.
they would get less or more, you know, like right now, it's kind of like, okay, this isn't right. How do we change it? Well, we need some policy changes, but some are like, I'm not really keen on that.
Correct. So here's, so schools, I'm gonna, I'm gonna say this, and because this is, I'm a wonk in this a little bit. The funding formula, you're absolutely right, is a policy, right? But how resources and funds are distributed across schools is a resource flow question at the school district level.
Yeah, yeah, I do, yeah. I
Yeah,
see
yeah.
what you're
So I
saying.
want to make sure for folks who, you know, are not,
Yep.
they're two separate things, right? You
Yep.
can press
Yeah.
at the school district level. Policy is the funding formula, right? It's unlocking that. Good job. Okay. What else? Oh, Jessica says, along with funding, Pennsylvania schools are funded through property taxes.
Yes, yes.
So in order to increase pay for teachers and administrators in our school districts, taxes must be increased. But this can be a hard sell. I'm chuckling because we just had a slugfest for a bond here in Kansas City, 35 years in the making, right? Property tax assessments. Woo! Okay. Good job.
We just had a lot of it. We just had our first property tax adjustment in our county since 1963. And it was horrific.
It was horrific. It's horrible. Horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I know.
Unbelievable. So that's a
Right.
hard sell then, because
It's a hard.
the
So
people-
so again, maybe we don't start there. Maybe that again, we're just listing the
Yes.
full breadth of opportunity that exists for us. Maybe we're like, hey, we just went at that, so we're not gonna touch that for a while, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so one of the things between resource flow and mental models, recently the Scranton School District, I saw on the reutilization committee. So we have like way too many elementary schools for the population and the projected population, right? So how do we utilize these schools better? How do we realign within the resources that we have? And the mental model that comes is everybody is like, well, I went to that school. I want my kid to go to that school. I want to have a neighborhood school. I want, you know, like
my kid versus our kids.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we have two high schools, and the plan was always to consolidate into one. And let me tell you, if you even mention that over in West Scranton, you will lose a limb.
Yeah.
Don't lose any limbs. No limbs. No limbs
Right.
lost.
The whole I went there or my kid went there.
But then it's
That's
funny
yeah.
because they'll complain that they don't have the same resources as Scranton High School. And I'm like sitting there going, okay, I'm like, shut your mouth, Vivian. Because I'm like, you don't get it then. You know, like, how come Scranton High School has a nice Megatron TV in their gym? We don't.
Yep.
Or like Scranton High School has a STEM Academy, West Scranton doesn't, because there's only enough resources for one.
For one. Yep.
But
And
the whole district can't attend it, so it's not being exclusionary.
Right.
Yep.
Would power dynamics fall under something like the teacher union? You know, the whole.
Yeah.
Sure. Relationships for sure. Jessica, I see you. But the home life of students drastically affects how they perform in schools. Students come to school hungry, sad. So I that's a good thing, right? Like, hey, if we want to improve the test scores, it's again, there are lots of leverage points for how we want to attack this, right?
Yeah. I
So
think
is it improving relationships with the families at home, right?
Yeah.
That could.
And to her point on that too, I think the mental model of like educators has changed, right? Like sometimes they're now like it's your job to educate. I'll take care of everything else. Where like before it's a relationship. There's, I just think the mind shift of, parents, but also what they're faced with now. So like they're faced with a lot of different things. So it's hard for that point, right? Of like, listen, I'm worried about my lights staying on. If my child is not in dress code tomorrow, I'm not worried.
Right. Right. Yep. What else? What
So
other mental model stuff? What else? What else?
relationship connections is that like parent teacher, community member, school board, like what are like
Legislators,
yeah.
policy changes.
Yeah. So one of the things we talk about a lot in terms of relationship and connections is oftentimes um uh it is folks who have children that are having these conversations, but there are folks in our school within the school district that live in the boundaries who are, empty nesters, they, young single folks ready to mingle, and they're like, I'm not even thinking about these kids, right? And how do you build relationships, right, with folks whose stake, right, is not in improving test scores or changing budgets or better about that's huge, right? Like, because if it ain't my problem, it's somebody else's problem, and I can keep going, right?
A lot of people think about that with their property taxes, right? They're like, well, I have no kids, but I'm a homeowner. Why do I have to pay school taxes then?
So in order to get a property tax reassessment, you've got to work on the policy. You've got to strengthen the relationships with folks who don't have kids or who don't see it as their stake. And you've got to do some deep mental model work, right? Around our kids. These are all of our kids as well, right?
And also related to the mental models for those who don't have kids, well, they can think, well, these are the future doctors who will take care of me when I'm older, or these are the business owners who will have a thriving economy or what have you.
Correct.
Yeah, and if you want a good community and neighborhood and, feel safe in your community and neighborhood by your zip code, then you want your schools to do good. So you shouldn't mind the school taxes that you are paying are really what's intriguing families to come to your schools. Because as the funding gets better, the schools become stronger. And then families want to move into your neighborhood for that purpose.
Right. That's right. If you build, I call it the if you build it, they will come mental model. Yeah. Right. Or the return on your investment, right? A down payment for the future, right? We use all of those phrases a lot, but that's what they signal to people. What else are we missing, y'all? Folks who haven't had a moment to weigh in, what are you thinking? Anything? I'm getting ready to pick on Nick because Nick was like, I'm telling you, Nick is the reason we ended up with this example because he was like, boom, I got these 5 whys. Come on, Nick, what you got? What you got, Nick? Come on.
I'm still trying to think.
That's okay. That's okay. I like to joke there are crock pots and our air fryers when we come to these activities. So it's okay. You crock pot over there, my friend.
Yeah, I gotta let it marinate a little bit.
You gotta let it marinate. You gotta get that sauce going. You gotta get the sauce going.
Jessica, I'd be curious, Jessica is in a rural area, so we're talking like multiple elementary schools and like the more urban quote unquote setting, but Jessica, is there anything else that like resonates in the more rural space here?
If you can hear me, I think I am on the school board for our district, and then many of my very best friends are teachers, and I was a teacher for 15 years. So one of the biggest issues is, and I think we've talked about this, just family life versus, when kids come to school, there are kindergartners that are not potty trained, and that dramatically affects the ability of a teacher to teach. And assessed when you're trying to work with kids that lack basic functions, basic skills, basic interpersonal ways. And it's very, very draining. So to have the energy to teach curriculum and get your kids ready versus having the energy to get your kids to stay in the classroom and not leave without permission and run around the building. It's just,
Yeah.
our school's very small, but they're really big issues and they're really affecting teacher morale and they're affecting kids that come to school that are in a that better mentally and emotionally to learn.
And that speaks to the value of the educator who is living through that space and while creating those wraparound services, the teacher, the value of that teacher is even stronger. So like that's an amazing piece to remember.
And I think even, as Jessica says that, like the support to teachers, right? Like I have an autistic child and, in the Scranton School District, the amount of autistic students has like doubled. And they have more classes now. And I was talking to Liz Hemphill from the school district, and she was saying elementary school principals are very burnt out because the amount of like kindergartners and first graders that are coming in with diagnoses that can't do a lot of those things, as Jen was saying, like either toileted or haven't sat for a while. Like some teachers aren't equipped to work with those types of behaviors. So you need to support your teachers and give them the resources they need as well. And this had come up because Liz and I were talking, she wants to try to get an additional 1 or 2 social workers into the elementary schools for that purpose.
Yeah.
Yep. It's also, I was thinking, Jessica's, I'm like, woohoo, school board member, you standing in the fire hose right now. Love it. Don't leave. We need good people. Don't leave. It hits on the idea of, oftentimes, just as I mentioned, as a classroom teacher myself, right? I used to say, I'm a professional. My job is not to potty train your child. I am not daycare, right? Like this is not the housing place for kids. This is a professional environment. So a lot of times shifting the mental model around just the professionalism of the teaching force, right? That the idea is that like, hey, I want to support your kiddo, but also I am here to do a job that I am professionally trained to be able to do. So how do you value me as a professional and not just the lady that keeps your kids from like 7:20 to 3 or whatever?
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. And to your point on who sits on the school board, when you said like, Jen, don't leave, and Smart don't leave either, because you said you were a school director. I think there's such an underappreciation for that, at least in our like community here. Like the amount of people running for school board has dwindled to the point, like, I mean, it's been brought up to me that I should run. And like, heck no, never. And it's like, because I feel that, people, don't do it for the right reason, or they aren't educated about what the role technically is, or the community doesn't understand what the role actually is, and I just think there's a lot around, in like recruiting people who are knowledgeable about the topic.
Correct. In a million years ago, it wasn't a million years ago, I ran a nonprofit, and probably 40% of our work was just that, recruiting and preparing potential school board members, because we understood how incredibly important a leverage point it was, right? To be able to affect so many of those different things. That was the lane I could max out, the cases that I could make. Is that when you find good people, you can educate them, you can build up their capacity in all of these other systems change conditions, but then imbue them with the kind of support, right, that allows for the power dynamics and to keep them in their seats, right? Like to keep them. We used to have like support group, right? We'd meet before the board meetings. I'm like, you cry in this room, but here's how you got to vote, and here's how you think about those things. So that's absolutely right. So we got a pretty good list here, y'all, right? Y'all feel good? Anything missing? Anything? It feels like a lot, right? And here's the funny part about this. This is the thing that I would say, this feels like a lot, right? And folks will look at this and go, how am I supposed to do everything? Okay, everybody's sitting down. I don't think everybody's sitting down. You're not supposed to do everything all at once. This is why we build coalitions, right? We build coalitions with other organizations, with other folks who have leverage and influence in some of these areas, specialties in these areas, and ask them to max out their lane. But it is also how we think strategically. You cannot do all of it all at once, all the time. What you can do is the very first win. And it's the first win you have got to be able to win in order to build the momentum, to find the champions, to get to the next one. Okay? So looking at all of this, I mean, we map this baby pretty doggone good, right? Where would you start?
Ooh. I liked where you went, Samara, with the school board, what your nonprofit was doing. I think that's a great leverage point. I don't know if that's the right leverage point here, but I definitely thought I love that what you were mentioning.
Yep.
I also think looking at what the percentage of our county tax, like within the city, how many of our property owners, how many people have children in this investing in the school district versus not? Because I think part of that, creating that investment in our community and being able to start having those conversations, because you could have people on a school board who are making decisions, and you have the conversation in the community of they don't know what the heck they're doing because they don't see the value themselves.
And the school board is representative of the entire community, whether you have children or not, because, so I think those two act like leverage points parallel, like everyone because if you get those people, they might engage more, and some might actually run for school board because they now get it,
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Right.
Which can get us to those mental models that's at the bottom if we work the right way. So
right. So then, right, and this is we're gonna stop right there unless anybody has a hankering, right? We've gone deep, y'all. Y'all didn't choose any shallow stuff. Y'all swinging for the trees. Anything that feels, or a particular in this vein of the what we have talked about in terms of school board investment in community, a policy. One of the things, so here's a fun one that we worked on that was a policy component to my organization, which is we asked the city, you let people off to vote, right, in federal elections. For folks who work for the city or right, and we worked with like our Chamber of Commerce, voting for school boards is, unless it's on the ballot, right, sometimes with like another significant thing, no one ever votes, right?
Yeah.
So a practice is get out to vote, right? Get out to vote for your school board members, right? Like, here's why this matters, right? Can the city have a policy that allows for city employees or employees of a particular for-profit to have hours off on a voting day where it's just school board on the ballot? Can they get a late start? Right? So that's a shallow policy thing but it actually aligns, right, with all of the different areas. So when you are mapping and you get pretty clear that, this is somewhere we can tap into, where are also the policies, practices, and resource flows, right, that could potentially be helpful, right? We lobby for our state, right? For talking about resource flows to be able to provide, I would call it like honorariums to folks who go to a school board school, right?
Okay.
Hey, stipend them, because to learn how to do this, you gotta, anyway. So, okay, I'm gonna stop there, because this is where you've identified it, okay? Jen, if we can, I know you're still typing to the next slide. We're gonna use this. Now, remember we came back. This is your graphic organizer. So now we're filling it out. So who's gonna be my guinea pig? How would you fill this out based on what we just mapped? Come on. I just need one. Is there, old church, can I give me one? Right? Literacy levels, test scores, student performance. Students making it pretty. Okay. So what did we identify as our root cause? Do y'all remember?
Yeah, undervalued of teachers and funding models. Yeah.
Okay. The leverage point you identified is, remember you identified a bunch of them.
Yeah. Was that what Amy had said about tax, I don't know how you worded it, but like the other one was potential school board volunteers, but yours is really good. About like engaging those who might not have children.
Right.
From that are taxpayers that are not parents.
Right. Yes. That was as elegant as I put it before too.
Because you could potentially get strong school board candidates from those when they realize, the impact of build it, they will come.
Yes.
Yep.
Shifting influences.
Where do you feel like you have the most, you guys are lower conference room squad, Jessica, sorry, I have a Jess, so I apologize. Jessica, Nick, y'all, where is the influence? Where can you press from your seat? What can you give a little effort toward? This one's tough.
I think some I don't know, the shift in influence is valuing the impact on the community of literacy rates / teacher allocations.
Value. You can influence.
Yeah, it's about, yeah.
Yep. So we've done the math of case making. My first strategic case is, in this example, what would it be? What would you call it? What's the case? Your first win. Who are you going to go talk to tomorrow to make the case to? What are you asking them to do?
I mean, if I was to do anything tomorrow, I would go try to gather stories that show value of improving our resources to the school.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, or I have like 5 million different thoughts. Because the first case is, going to maybe the city, right? To hear, I'm sure many people have complained about their neighborhoods, about safety, that's how you can frame our case of, well, if you focus on our schools, whether you are a resident with children or not, we can build a place that people will come because it's attractive for them to educate their children.
There we go.
Ooh, my brain hurts. You came up with that.
My brain hurts. That's why we don't do this alone. That's why this is really case making. This work is really hard in isolation. That's why you got to get your friends together, right? Our whole community benefits, right? We all focus on our schools. Our whole community benefits. It's your first case. You're headed to the city. That's your first target influence. That's the first case. It's just the first one, right?
Yeah, and honestly, with relationships, it's kind of funny. Like, I do think our superintendent works very well with our mayor, but I would challenge them to go deeper with school directors and city council. You know, because those people are supposed to be directly in being the representation of the people that they serve.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That's it, y'all.
That's exciting. Like, that's it.
That's it. Everybody's brain hurts. That's it. We've won the day, Jen. Everybody's brain hurts.
Nick, did we break you?
Here's a full laughter today. Cooked.
That's it. That's it. That's the science about it, right? And so what I encourage you to do, again, use the graphic organizer, get in a room, map it down, then go back and put it all together. And that's your strategy. Then decide, how long is it going to take us to work this case, right? Who are we talking to first? But the thing is, again, around coalition building, you've got other folks in community who can work on the other lanes of this stuff. It doesn't mean it's bad. All leverage points matter. All opportunities are opportunities. But the discipline that it takes to win your first case requires just that, a little bit of discipline. And unfortunately, we don't go deep enough and we're not disciplined enough in our leverage points. And that's the work. That's where you start to move people across the bridge. So I'm going to stop. We're at time. I'm done talking. What's one thing that stuck today? Jen, I don't even know where you got this photo from. When I left her alone, you guys. She is unhinged today. Unhinged. What's the thing that stuck? One thing that stuck. That's your exit ticket.
I'm just going to reflect that the people that are present today, I thank all of you for being live with us, and that you represent different parts of our community. So like, this was not a city of Scranton. This is not a unique issue. This is happening across all the different parts of our county and region. So the fact that we now all have this information and can work together or support each other is huge.
Yeah. And I think one thing that stuck to me, sorry, you mentioned it a while back about leverage points. They don't have to be big, right? Like, they can be very small leverage points. And that's what I think, wrapping up the last case of like, okay, simple, go down to City Hall, go talk to the city. Like, it's a very simple leverage point that can continue, but you have to be very dedicated to it. But it's a small step to start.
Absolutely. Small steps, big wins. People get excited about winning. Absolutely. Well, you all, this has been phenomenal. You know, I am like hopeful that, you know, Jen and I mean, because we've just cornered the market here. We're like, we got the whole Scranton, the whole neighbor region. We'd love to be able to continue working with y'all and keep the learning, because this is only the first part. Now we talk about how to build the strategic case. That's where we leave off. And next, right, is there is a pathway to actually build out what you're going to go say to city council, right? You just have now gotten really smart about who your target is. And now we talk about, right, how we execute that. So we thank you so much for your time, for your attention, for all of the things. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much. We look forward to talking soon.
Have a wonderful holiday season, y'all.
Thank you.
Stay warm.
Stay warm, friends.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.